The left wall was divided by a wide doorway which opened to another room. Flopped on the floor at the opening was Roger, with his head pressed into the floorboards. Roger was not a small man, and he filled the doorway. I crouched down and put my hands on his shoulders. After a moment, he looked up at me, his leathery face wet and blotchy. He opened his mouth to say something, but there was only silence as tears dripped free from his gray beard. After a moment, he just closed his mouth and shook his head. My stomach tightened and a cold sweat flashed along my back. I looked past Roger into the room, which was full of tools and tables. On the ground, a bit past Roger, a single small shoe was sitting on its side. Behind the shoe, a motionless leg lay partially obscured by a workbench. I stood up and moved to go past Roger. He made a wet sound and grabbed at me, but I brushed his hands away as I stepped over him. I grew cold as I approached the leg. I walked around the workbench and looked down at Jessica. She was clearly dead. Her torso was oddly twisted and misshapen. Her head was a mess and I couldn't find her face. Her fists were splattered with red, but there was strangely little of it on the ground. From the movies, I would have expected Jessica to be soaking in a lake of it. I finally sucked in some air and backed away toward Roger. I was suddenly shaken by the knocking of overhead steps. I stumbled and latched onto a nearby table for support. I stared upwards as these steps came to a halt. I looked over and Roger was dragging himself up off the floor. The hard footsteps.
Nope.
I began looking over the room, searching for potential evidence. I spotted a claw hammer and took it off the wall and played with it in my hands. It felt good and heavy. I started searching for a weapon for Roger, but when I looked over, he was gone.
No.
Roger, there he is. What the heck? The footsteps above seemed to be moving toward the staircase which led to the bottom floor. I quickly snatched the nearest tool, a mallet, and ran out and through the storage room. I called Roger climbing the staircase, already halfway to the top. Maybe he didn't need a weapon. He was at least 3 times the size of Paxton. But after seeing Jessica, I didn't feel confident in anything. Roger! I shouted as quietly as possible. Roger ignored me and continued climbing. After a moment of hesitation, I jumped to the first step and followed after him. I heard talking as I approached the living room. I surmounted the final step, but didn't go no further. Roger had his back to me and blacked out most of the living room. I pushed past his right side, eager but not ready to confront Paxton. But instead, I found a dark-haired woman with a canvas duffel bag slung over her shoulder, and some kind of gun holstered on her right hip. Roger was still wiping at his face. He moved to give me some space, and the woman took a step back to accommodate the growing circle. "And this is Sam," Roger explained. "I called her just before I left. I thought it might be better if He trailed off. "Hi," I said and fumbled with the hammer and mallet. I put my hand out. "Hey," she returned as she quickly shook my hand. There was a moment of quiet confusion as I looked to Roger, to Sam, and then down to Sam's gun. "Look," she began. "You two wait here and I'll be back in a minute," she stated as she moved to the staircase. Roger and I both started to object as she descended. "If the guy comes back, just shout for me, okay?" she ordered as she disappeared.
That's how I spoil my animals. Have a good day, everyone.
She